employees do not know how to negotiate salary.
Well, I think first and foremost is kind of what we have to work with, and that's the documentation. And then also keep in mind that the coding wasn't necessarily designed for reimbursement. It was designed for statistical analysis and tracking of the various diseases. I know the US kind of morphed it into what it is today as it deals with reimbursement. So it's kind of dual, but always in the forefront is an opportunity for us to make sure that we're telling the patient's story, their clinical story, through codes and the diagnoses and procedures that they have. But again, we're bound by the documentation that the professionals or the provider documents. And so if there's lacking in the coding side of it, it's primarily due to the documentation that we are receiving on the provider end. And so even in our conversations, kind of working together and understanding that it's all in the team. The team, everybody has to do their part in order to get the end result and a great outcome for the patient. We on the business side of healthcare also kind of values our relationship with the team in doing what we need to do to make sure that our patients, because we feel like they're our patients too, that our patients are getting the services that we're provided. But again, we're kind of, our hands are tied unless the documentation is there, which, now we have other programs like we talked about earlier, like CDI and those types of things that will help in getting the best documentation we can out of our providers, even though it drives them kind of crazy that we're tapping them on the shoulder like, ma'am and sir, did you miss this? Or can you consider this? Or how about this? We saw this. Can you, take a look at that? But at the end of the day, it's what helps our patients and provides their whole clinical perspective. So yeah. My little soapbox moment, sorry.
And as we talk about CDI, another point that I think, gets left out of the whole conversation regarding documentation is that CDI people are most often are not coders.
Correct.
So they don't even have, so when we talk, we know as a coder what we want the doctor to document, but CDI people pretty much usually only work off of clinical indicators. Mm-hmm. They don't work off of, because when I took my CDI exam for AHIMA, there were only two coded guideline questions and one CTC guideline question. So you could technically pass this exam without knowing anything about coding because it is not a coding exam.
Correct.
And I think that piece, that would really bridge the gap further. As everyone was talking, I was just thinking, if they require CDI people to not only be credentialed as CDI but be a coder, I think that would also improve the line of communication because then they would know exactly, because they're the person that's front facing with the providers. So they would have a bigger impact if they were coders to know what coders needed.
Yep.
That's the second question.
Yep.
Is compensation.
Yep.
And what I will tell anybody and everybody, and because I do it, I don't tell anybody to do anything, I don't do it. You have to know how to negotiate. And most people, not the coders aside, most employees do not know how to negotiate salary. Because there's no such thing as we can't pay that. What that really translates to is we don't want to pay you that. And you have to come now in the beginning. If this is your first job, you will still have to, that's when you use your transferable skills. You have to know what other skills have helped you be a coder. Like you mentioned biology, having a biology background. So you have a lot more science experience than in education than the average coder. So that should you have to talk that up. You have to do all your transferable skills about your attention to detail, and you will have to take the coding assessment. So you're going to pass the assessment in order to even get to the point where you're going to be talking about compensation anyway. So you have to use all those transferable skills, and you're going to do some research for your particular area. And because the regional salary differences do come into play, but a lot of jobs are remote. So if you have a remote job, you could live in Arizona, you could live in Oklahoma, but if your job is based on the East Coast, you're gonna make more money than a coder in Oklahoma.
Correct.
Because that's where the regional differences come in. And I just can't stress enough. Coders have to play up their transferable skills. But see, if you are an adult coming into coding, you have a whole lot of transferable skills because you had a work issue. And in addition, and especially if you have a science background, you have to play that up. And I'll just give you a quick story. The job I have currently, it's a new field of coding for me, so I knew I was going to have to make an adjustment, and I was willing to. So when we got to when they made me the offer, I counted because I never accept the first offer. That's just me. So I counted. So of course they come back with less than what I requested because that's what they do. So I turned them down. I said, no thank you. I said, I'm not willing to budge. So I get off the phone. 3 days later, they called me back and they met my offer. You have to know how to negotiate.
I think that's a management issue. That's a total management issue. And I think, unfortunately, there were lots and lots of negative things that COVID-19 presented to us. The benefit, though, was this whole remote work situation. And it's amazing to me how, just months before everything shut down, oh, you can't do that at home. You can't work at home. And now it's the quote unquote new norm. And I think there's a lot of the things that we do really could have always been done remotely. It's again right now as the end user and the frontline worker in those fields. I think we get it and we understand. It's management because as a manager, you're taught the skill set, and again, it depends on your organization. Let me preface that. It depends on the organization. A lot of organizations kind of have the micromanagement style where, they need to see you, they need to check you, they need to what have you. And that's a little difficult. And it's a difficult transition for a lot of those managers in this new norm. So I think, and even Tara, to your point, a good manager will pull his or her team together. So you find ways to do that, and you find ways to disseminate the information that they need to do their job versus, oh my God, I'm out here by myself. Nobody can help me. Who do I call? Your manager, it's about the manager. And I think there needs to be some this has been my soapbox all day. There needs to be some training on managers in this space.
I started out at home. My first job was remote. I've been coding now for over 7 years, and in those 7 years, I only had to go into an office less than 3 months. So, and whenever you start a job, it doesn't matter whether you've been coding for 1 year or for 20 years. You never hit the ground running. There's always a training period. There's always a QA period. I always want to make sure you get adjusted. And if you have any questions, so you won't even if you work remotely, you're never by yourself.
Never.
Totally.
You're right about that. And then back to your original point, there should be a manual. department.
Clary, you hit the nail on the head when you were talking about managers and management style, because I have to say, like, the best company I ever worked for, including was in Omaha. They're based in Bowie, Maryland. We had, under our quality manager, I was on several teams. Before I got on this one team, I could never understand why we were in meetings. And when I tell you, like, our teams were like 30, 31, 32 coders in a team. This man's team, accuracy-wise, every month was 98%, the whole team. And I'm like, wow, how is he doing this? Then there was another team, they were consistently like subpar. I ended up, as fate would have it, I ended up on both of their teams at different times. The person who had the highest accuracy score, he did it because he was the most responsive. If you had a question, he got back to you. And that's why, like, remote doesn't mean that you don't have any support, because technology and coding is like next level. He would be able to log into my computer, or I would, now you just share your screen. He would be able to read my review, and if I had a question, we would talk about what my question was and what would be the steps, and case go, and he would say, this is what the policy says we have to do. So that on his team, my accuracy was the highest it ever was the whole time I was with that company. Then fast forward, I get transferred to this other person's team where they're consistently, subpar. And I understood why. When I first got on this person's team, I was sent a 20-page PDF on how to send an email. Not just email her. You had to have this way, you had to be formatted this way, you had to have this as the subject. And then when I would ask questions or email, it would go unanswered. So I understood, and it all goes back to management style and having the policy and procedure ahead. So Clarice was spot on.
Yeah, that is, to me, that's the key. And you, in your experience, you can see the difference in the success rate. Thank you all for joining. This has been great. I love it. Every week it's a joy, and I learned something new as well. So remember my motto: don't wish for it, work for it. And I will see you all next Saturday at 9 a.m.